There's a moment in almost every adult's life where you pause, notice the way you react to something tiny, and think, why am I like this? Maybe it's the way your voice stiffens during conflict, or how you apologize too fast, or how you feel guilty for resting even when you've earned the break. Maybe it's the hesitation before asking for help even when you need it badly. Or how praise feels strange, almost suspicious, like it was meant for someone else. And in that quiet, uncomfortable moment, you realize you're not reacting as the adult you've grown into. You're reacting as the child you once were. Most people never admit this out loud, but childhood isn't something we outgrow. It's something we grow around. Like a tree that bends because the early winds pushed it, humans carry the shape of their first seasons for the rest of their lives. We change, we evolve, but those early patterns stay with us, quietly influencing everything: our relationships, our confidence, our fears, our dreams, our habits, our emotional reactions, even the way we see ourselves. It begins earlier than we think. Scientists say that by age 7, the basic blueprint for our emotional world is already taking shape. Not complete, just forming, like soft clay. And the hands that mold it aren't only the people around us, parents, caregivers, teachers, but the moments themselves. The tone of a room, the way someone looked at us on a bad day, the way someone didn't look at us when we needed them most. The words spoken with love, the words spoken carelessly, and the words never spoken at all. Childhood is full of firsts we barely remember, yet never forget. The first time you felt safe. The first time you felt unseen. The first time someone raised their voice. The first time someone soothed you. The first time you were told you were capable. The first time someone made you feel small. The brain stores all of it long before we understand the meaning of any of it. And here's what most people don't realize. Childhood doesn't just shape how we see the world. It shapes how we expect the world to treat us. It becomes the lens, the quiet prediction, the script running in the background. If you grew up with encouragement, you likely enter rooms believing you belong. If you grew up with criticism, you might enter the same rooms expecting to fail. If you grew up around calm, your body may naturally stay steady under pressure. If you grew up around tension, your body may still hold that tension today, even when there's no danger. Childhood doesn't ask permission to stay, it simply does. And so much of adulthood becomes this strange puzzle, trying to understand why certain things feel heavier than they should, why rejection hurts more than expected, why silence feels uncomfortable, why you overthink simple choices, why you attach too quickly or never fully attach at all, why letting go feels unsafe, why achievements still don't feel like enough, why love feels complicated even when it's healthy, why you can't relax unless everything is perfect, or why a part of you still feels like you're proving something to someone long gone from your life. People often say adults are just older children, and while poetic, it's also psychological. The brain develops rapidly in childhood, and the patterns created then become shortcuts. The mind uses them because they're familiar, not because they're helpful. That's why the way you shut down in arguments, the way you replay conversations, the way you trust too easily, or not at all, it all comes from somewhere. Think about it. If a child grows up in a home where love is expressed through actions instead of words, they may feel awkward when someone shows affection verbally, not because they dislike it, but because receiving it is unfamiliar. If a child grows up needing to earn affection through achievement or perfection, they may grow into adults who believe love is conditional. Even when life becomes safe, they don't realize they're still living from an old script written by a younger version of themselves. And if a child grows up around unpredictability, mood swings, instability, sudden shifts, they may become adults who are always on alert, always scanning, always waiting for something to go wrong. Not because they want to, but because the nervous system formed under early stress doesn't easily forget. Childhood teaches the body how to feel before the mind learns how to think. And that early emotional education becomes the template the mind uses for decades. You might think you're choosing your patterns, but often your patterns are choosing you. Two people can hear the same sentence and interpret it completely differently, not because of the sentence, but because of the childhood behind the ears hearing it. Childhood shapes how we love, how we speak, how we fight, how we recover from setbacks, how we deal with uncertainty, how we accept affection, and how we push people away. It even shapes our inner voice, the one we hear the most. If you grew up with encouragement, it becomes your inner voice. If you grew up with doubt or impatience, that voice doesn't vanish. It becomes internalized. And sometimes adults end up treating themselves the way someone else once treated them. Children don't just learn from behavior, they absorb the emotional climate of their home. If you grew up around stress, even without explanation, your body still felt it. And years later, you may wonder why your shoulders tense when things get quiet, why your mind races when life slows down, why calm feels both inviting and unfamiliar. Some people become the peacemaker, avoiding conflict because conflict never felt safe. Some become the performer, always impressive because that's how they earned attention. Some become the helper, putting everyone first because their worth was tied to usefulness. Some become the observer, hiding because being seen felt risky. Some become the fixer, because fixing things used to maintain peace. These roles feel natural in adulthood, but they began as childhood survival strategies. Strategies that worked then, but may not serve you now. Childhood shapes not just the soft parts of us, but our goals, ambitions, fears, and the things we chase. Some chase success, not for passion, but because the child in them still wants to be recognized. Some chase perfection, not out of joy, but because mistakes once felt dangerous. Some avoid risk, not because they're incapable, but because early risks led to disappointment. Some stay small because visibility once felt unsafe. Childhood becomes the invisible map behind adult decisions. But childhood also shapes the beautiful parts: your empathy, imagination, resilience, the way you notice things others overlook. Sensitivity isn't weakness, it's proof that you learned to feel deeply early on. Childhood feels far away, yet it shows up everywhere. In the pause before you speak, in the need for reassurance, in the slow way you open up, in the way certain compliments hit unexpectedly deep, in the worry of being a burden, in the struggle to say no, in the urge to over-explain so no one misunderstands you. These aren't random behaviors. They're chapters from a book you started writing long before you could read. And sometimes your adult reactions are simply outdated protective instincts. You might avoid expressing needs because the child in you learned it didn't matter. You might overwork because rest had to be earned. You might stay in unhealthy situations because stability, even flawed, felt safer than chaos. You might struggle to accept help because independence became your only safe place. None of this means you're broken. It means you adapted. You survived with the tools you had. You learned how to move through a world you didn't choose. Those early lessons helped you through confusion, loneliness, and moments where you felt too small for the world around you. You're not weak because childhood shaped you. You're human because it did. Many adult struggles aren't signs of failure. They're echoes of things you never had the words for. Echoes of moments that shaped you before you knew they were shaping you. You might think you're bad at relationships, when truthfully, you just weren't shown healthy communication. You might think you're too sensitive, when sensitivity once kept you safe. You might think you're lazy, when your body only recognizes overwhelm as normal. You might think your dreams are unrealistic, when you simply never had someone telling you they were possible. Early experiences often become internal truths. If you were criticized, the criticism becomes louder than reality. If love was inconsistent, you learn to chase it. If you grew up around conflict, raised voices feel dangerous. If you were compared often, comparison becomes automatic. If you were forced to be the responsible one, that pressure follows you into adulthood, even when no one demands it anymore. Childhood shapes not just emotions, but the brain itself. Neural pathways formed early become the roads your mind still travels. Patterns of fear, trust, connection. That's why you sometimes respond with an intensity that doesn't match the moment. The mind uses old data for new situations. The child in you sometimes takes the wheel, trying to protect you with outdated tools. You might wonder why certain people make you nervous without reason, why compliments make you emotional, why you freeze when someone asks what you need, why guilt appears when you finally prioritize yourself, why you feel unprepared even when you've done everything right, why love feels both comforting and frightening, why being misunderstood hurts so deeply. These aren't random, they're memories disguised as instincts. Childhood doesn't stay in the past. It lives in your breath, in your pauses, in the way you hug people, in the way you avoid eye contact when overwhelmed, in the way your heart jumps when someone says, "We need to talk." But here's the twist. Childhood may shape you, but it doesn't have to control you. Awareness is where the past stops being the author and becomes a reference point. When you notice the patterns, you begin to recognize who you were taught to be versus who you actually are. You see the strength behind your fears, the courage behind your sensitivity, the resilience behind your wounds. Your greatest strengths often grew from the hardest parts of your childhood. If you're empathetic, it's because you learned to feel. If you're observant, it's because you had to pay attention. If you're gentle, it's because you knew the cost of harshness. If you're strong, it's because you had no choice. There comes a moment when you realize you're no longer that child. You have more tools, more knowledge, more voice. The walls that once felt solid start to look thin. The fears that felt permanent start to feel like signals instead of sentences. Healing isn't about erasing childhood. It's about reteaching the parts of you that are still stuck there. You teach yourself what safety feels like. You teach yourself love that doesn't need earning. You teach yourself to rest without guilt. You teach yourself that saying no doesn't make you unlovable. You teach yourself that mistakes don't erase your worth. You choose relationships that don't repeat old wounds. And slowly, the child inside begins trusting the adult you're becoming. Healing starts in the smallest moments. The pause before reacting. The awareness that a familiar feeling is old. The choice to respond differently. The gentle self-talk you wish you heard years ago. The willingness to feel emotions you once avoided. The breath you take instead of running. Healing isn't loud, it's steady. It's the quiet rewiring of emotional habits built in years you barely recall. It's becoming the person you needed when you were young. And one of the hardest things about adulthood is unlearning the beliefs childhood left behind. Beliefs like, I need to earn love. I must be perfect to be accepted. My needs are too much. People always leave. I shouldn't ask for help. I'm not enough. These beliefs didn't come from truth. They came from context. The good news? Beliefs are not facts. They're impressions, and impressions can be rewired. You start by questioning the story gently. Is this feeling from my current reality or something older? Is this fear protecting me or limiting me? Is this reaction about the present or about a past I didn't know how to express? When you separate past from present, you create space. And space is where healing happens. And sooner or later, you realize the things you thought were flaws were actually adaptive strengths. Overthinking kept you prepared. People-pleasing kept the peace. Avoiding conflict kept you safe. Proving yourself helped you feel worthy. Caution protected your heart. You didn't choose these traits. They were the best survival tools you had. And now, with awareness, you don't have to fight yourself. You can guide yourself, gently, patiently, compassionately. Because guidance is what you needed all along.